Welcome, streamers. We are going to be talking about getting personal with your audience. And if you can go TMI, I think we could. So we're going to create some guidelines for you. And I think you'll have a better understanding of what makes good personal touches versus TMI, because this is something that my audience has come to me and asked me a lot. So I thought today would be a great time to talk about that, but we'll get to that in a minute. I want to say hi to everyone first. Hello, Kevin. Neither. Did you like my new song list today? That's actually not new. I just kind of mixed it up a bit today. Threw in another song that you probably haven't heard, at least in quite a while. If you guys don't know this by now, we use all epidemic sound songs. That was the phrase I was looking for. So you guys can get a 30-day free trial through Epidemic Sound, through our link, and then you'll be able to play the songs at your desire as well. And if you want to see what our songs are, you can head on over to livestreamingpros.com/songs, because if you're like, oh, what are the songs that she's playing? I love those. Yes, exactly. You can do that right there. livestreamingpros.com/songs and /music if you want to get the 30-day free trial. So there you go. Well, thank you, Floyd, encouraging the thumbs up. Yes. Hey, Dave, good to see you. Glad to see you here. It's been a while. Paul said earlier, this is not the comment, but he said he dyed his hair. We need to see a pic. Definitely need to see a pic. How is everybody today? I think I am getting sick personally. So I slept like I had 2 naps on Monday. I had like a 2-hour nap and a 30-minute nap. I've been so tired all week. And today I'm feeling kind of like scratchy in here. So not the unnamed, but just probably something little picked up. I got some orange juice. I've had 2 cups of orange juice. That doesn't look like orange juice. It just looks like a dirty glass. But there you go. Okay. So Richard says, if I wanted to help the wife become a streamer, is there a series of classes I could point her to? What would be rough getting started? So what you want to do is head on over to this link, Richard, livestreamingpros.com/studio. That will get you the training series, the training program to help you create a video studio. We also have coaching as well, and a membership so that you can get feedback, you can get support. We get on weekly calls together. So if you are interested in that, it would start here, livestreamingpros.com/studio, and then you can add coaching if that's something that you think she would benefit from. Okay. Yes, Greg, actually we're going to be talking about poop today. A little teaser. Shall we get started with this party? I certainly think so. How much is too much? Where is the TMI line for sharing personal tidbits with your audience? Often people will come to me and say, Luria, you tell us to get personal with our audience. You tell us to get vulnerable, but where's the line? Like, I feel like if I share XYZ, it's gonna get really too much. Like, my audience probably doesn't want to hear that. So we're gonna talk about that today. If you're new around here, please do type new in the comments. I would love, love, love to meet you. Give you a special shout out. And if you don't know me, hi, I'm Luria Petrucci, and I am from Live Streaming Pros, where we help you create professional live video that is uniquely you. So we are going to dive into all of this today. And I really want you to participate. If you're watching live, I want you to participate and start giving me ideas of things that you maybe have not shared with your audience that you feel like is TMI. Maybe you're just wondering, like, would this fall in the TMI category or not? Because yes, you can get too personal. Yes, you can cross a line. But most of the lines, and forgive me, we are having a windstorm, so my windows are vibrating with the crazy amounts of wind we have. So if you hear noises in the background, that's what you're hearing. But you definitely could go too far, but I think most people's line is further in than it should be. They feel like they're going TMI too early, if that makes sense. So let's talk about that. Here's why you need to share personal stuff, because it makes you human, right? So people are connecting to you as a personal person, as a human being. So when they're watching you, it doesn't matter if you're training, if you're teaching, if you're educating, they want to hear from you. And so you can do that in a variety of ways to add your personality, your personal stories, your personal triumphs, your personal baggage. Yes, you can even share your negatives through life, your experiences, things that you don't like about yourself. And it can be very, very powerful for talking to your audience and connecting. So when they connect with you, guess what? You get more views. You get more engagement. You get more sales. Your everything grows out of that personal human connection in a much bigger and quicker way than if you try and just keep everything inside, right? So keep those comments coming, guys. I see some tips coming in, and I see some suggestions and ideas, and I definitely will be tapping into all of that. So add your tips and add your thoughts or questions. If you do have a question, put Q in front of the question. So a couple of stories, a couple of examples of what is good when it comes to providing personal extras inside of your content so that you can connect with your audience. On Monday, I was doing an interview with Kim Garst. Some of you may know her. And we were talking about kind of this concept, and we started talking about her dog's poop. So she actually had, her dog got her really upset stomach, and she started like going to the bathroom all over the house. And so she painted this picture of her like having to clean up the mess, just a complete mess, right? And so we were talking about that as an example. Is that too TMI for her audience? No, not necessarily, because what she came out of that, she actually wound up buying a URL while we were live talking about this. And I don't remember what the URL was exactly, but basically the concept, she was like, you know what? We all have poop in our businesses, because she helps entrepreneurs grow their business. And so she was like, we all have poop in our business, and it's how you like transition from the poop to the success. And so that was a perfect segue into a teaching moment, right? So we're going to talk about that. And by the way, I do want to point out that on the next episode of Uniquely You, the show, the podcast, that link is in the description and coming to you in comments. On the next episode of that, we will be diving even deeper into this topic about boundaries and how you share without oversharing. And so I will be, that podcast allows me to get really raw, really vulnerable with you guys and give you some additional insight and tips that go beyond what we do here in these streams. So go subscribe to that, listen to the first 3 episodes, but the next episode, we will be diving even deeper into this. So at an easy level, right? Greg, wait, and it is ECAMM. I do use ECAMM, yes. But let's say poop, LSP. Funny, very funny, Greg. So at an easy level, like I talk about my dog all the time, right? Abby the Chihuahua is actually behind me on another pillow, and I talk about her constantly. I talk about when she does have an upset stomach, or when she has to go to the vet, or the good and the bad around my dog. That's an easy example of how to bring in your personal life into your content, right? But when you think about going deeper, and this is where I want your feedback, when you think about going deeper, where is that line? So I often talk about how I lived the majority of my life in controlling relationships of one kind or another from the time I was a kid. So it's like, do I tell that just to tell the story? No, I don't. I talk about it in relation to an educational moment or an inspirational moment or something that will help my audience understand something, right? When my mom went into the hospital, she almost died. This was a couple of years ago. I shared, those details. Now, that's an example of something that doesn't really have an educational, teaching moment in it. It's a little further down, a little further away from that experience. Yes, it did. I could take that experience and talk about it, but a lot of people think that when they are going through, say, a death in the family or something like that they shouldn't share it, that they should hide it away from their audience and just keep being professional. How many of you have felt that way? And I strongly disagree. So when I'm going through like the experience of my mom almost dying, yeah, I shared that. I talked about it. Had nothing to do with the content, but it did have to do with the fact that I wasn't able to do shows, like I couldn't show up for my audience. So I talked about that instead. Did I go into a whole lot of detail? No, I didn't. Could I have? Sure. But I also had some things that part of that story would have been breaking trust with my mom. And so that wouldn't have been a good thing to do, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. But I do want you to be aware of the fact that when you do have something going on in your life, where it's a death or a traumatic experience or something like that, it is absolutely okay to share that with your audience because they care about you as a human being. They don't just show up for your content. They show up for you if you're doing this right. And so I want you to be aware and open to having that connection with your audience. Exactly. The Heart of a Villain says it perfectly. Opening up to the audience makes you more relatable, more human, and people want that. People absolutely want that because we need that human connection. We as human beings need other human connection. It's just the fact of life. It's how we operate. So offering that to your audience can be a really powerful thing. I want to point out, I don't know if she's here, Nika Stewart is one of our longtime community members, and she has been going through a cancer battle. And she, with her audience, has taken them through every step of that process. But guess what? The wind, the sound that the wind makes against my windows is just cracking me up. Just like, anyway, so she has taken her audience through every experience. She's done videos about radiation, about chemo. She's, she's shown the shaving of her head, all of the things that go along with her battle, she has shared with her audience. The key here with her is that she has actually done it in such an inspirational way. People are in awe of how she has handled and how she has gone through that battle with such a positive attitude. Has every moment been positive? No. But it shows you as an audience member, and I have, had this thought myself just watching her, I'm in awe because like that, I can't even imagine going through that. And she's sitting there going through it, and she's so positive, and she's ready to jump back on the content horse. She's ready to dig into her business again. And all I can think is, wow, like I'm dealing with all sorts of stuff, of course, but nothing like that, so I can't complain, it gives you a different perspective, right? It's inspirational. So I just wanted to kind of give you those kind of examples, and I see a bunch of questions and comments coming through. First of all, thank you so much. I'm glad that you're enjoying the podcast. Definitely, we will be digging even deeper in the podcast episodes, so I'm really excited about that. So where exactly is the too far line, that TMI line? I wanted to point out this. We have a free Facebook group, and actually I forgot to put that in the description. If our mods can link to the Facebook group for Uniquely You. I asked the audience, I asked the Uniquely You community, I was like, where do you think, like, what do you think about boundaries? Kevin Cross there were so many good answers, and I'll be talking about those more in the podcast episode coming up. But Kevin said, too personal are subjects that encroach on the privacy of others or seem to attack or expose others. And I thought that was so well said, because that's what I believe as well. There are certain things in my life that I've gone through, a divorce, and I've talked about that publicly. When I was going through it, I kept pretty much all of it secret, like personal, like that. It was not something that I talked about. I talked about the fact that it was happening. It was obvious. But I did not talk about the details because of privacy, right? So I felt at that time, as I'm going through it, the things that I could say or would have to say about that experience and why I had to leave and et cetera, that would have just been gossip at that point. It would have torn apart people. It would have ruined lives. It would have just been all negative, right? And I don't operate that way. So I think that that's a very good, rule to live by when it comes to where that TMI line is. Are you going to harm somebody else? Are you going to encroach the privacy of others? To me, that's not something that is okay to share. So that's one. Also, you can cross the TMI line by always complaining. So let's take Nika as an example. If she had taken the opposite approach of her cancer journey and sharing all of that, then if she basically was like, oh, I have cancer, this is horrible, I feel so horrible, I feel wretched, I'm depressed, like if all she was sharing was all the negative, then that's too much. It's going too far because your audience is being dragged down. If you can take a positive approach, an inspirational approach, and also you do have some negative in there. Of course you do. It's with certain, situations. But if you can integrate the majority of it being a help for your audience in some way, then that's not TMI. So if you're being too negative, too complaining about something, and you're not turning it into that teachable or inspirational moment, then that is going too far. I think the litmus test here is to ask yourself, what purpose does this serve? If you're thinking about sharing something and you're not sure if it's TMI or not, then put a purpose behind it, right? And if the purpose is to destroy somebody, probably not a good idea. If the purpose is to help your audience in some way, some form or fashion, then that's a good thing, right? So you can deliver that personal side of you, and you can get vulnerable with your audience if you follow those rules. Thank you so much. Caleb says we hit the nail on the head. Yes, so we need some uplift in our lives as an audience or group. You need some good with the bad. You can have bad. Exactly, Michael. You can have bad because, as John says, it's not always rainbows and unicorns, but talk to it a little. Don't let it be the entirety of your content. Is sharing going to uplift and educate? You guys are saying it all so well. I love this. So I'm going to go backwards here. But I definitely, and tackle some of your questions that you submitted, but keep this conversation going. If you're watching the replay, join us live, because then you do get to take part in the conversation aspect of it. We trimmed this part off during the replay. So definitely join us live, and go to subscribe to the podcast, the livestreamingpros.com/podcast. That is the Uniquely You show, which will help you discover who you are and integrate you and your truly authentic self, not this fake authentic stuff that the world lives in, but your true vulnerability, and put that into your life, your business, and your content. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're enjoying that. Okay, let's move in to the question segment. Yes, I love it. Okay. John says, educate, invigorate, and inspire. That's what I try to march to. Very well said. So many questions that I think are TMI for the live stream. No, bring them on. Bring on those questions. That's what we're here to talk about. And I want to help you if you're struggling with an example, a specific thing, then let's talk about that. Cheeky says, what's the most personal thing you've shared on LSP? Great question, Cheeky. So the most personal thing I have shared to date is about it's been about my the fact that I've lived in controlling relationships my whole life, and my struggle to break free from that. Now I live free from that, but it still has, hold on me in certain ways. And so I've talked in depth about that in different ways, in different episodes, different things. Coming up on the podcast, it's time for me to break even further. So that next episode is going to allow me to kind of go a little deeper and share some things that I never have shared before. So that is, and I'm not going to mention what that is. You'll have to listen to the podcast. But yeah, so I'm constantly working on getting more personal with you guys. But again, it has to be in a way that is helpful for me to be okay with sharing stuff. It has to be helpful in some way. And so there you go. Paul says, would you say if the personal can be tied into the theme of the day or content discussion, those are helpful additions to the show and not too personal? Absolutely. I talk about personal stuff all the time in relation to it's the context, right? In the right context for the right reasons, as Cheeky says. Exactly. Purpose-driven sharing. That's a great insight. Thank you. That was a tease. So, absolutely. If you are able to tie in to a theme, to a content, examples, stories, that is the perfect way to tap into your personality, your personal things, and get vulnerable with the audience, because it is wrapped around a topic that they have shown you that they care about, right? Halo in the Hammer says, should I keep ignoring passes being made at me? Are you single? Oh, etc. And continue to only respond to on-topic comments, or do I make it known I'm married and these passes are unwelcome? So that's kind of like the troll conversation that we have often around here. And Halo, I would say that you have to decide how you want to handle that. So for many years, as when I was in the tech industry, I dealt with that on a consistent basis. Luckily, I don't, in the content that I do now, I don't deal with that anymore. Plus, I'm older. But for 10 years, I had that as a constant thing. And the way I chose to handle it was to kind of ignore it for the most part. If I were doing it today, I would probably put it out there more. I'd be like, guys, come on, let's not go there. That's not what this content is about. Let's move on. I'm not available. I'm not interested, blah, blah, blah. I would kind of hit it more head on now, but I've have that experience. And at the time I chose to just kind of ignore it because it made me uncomfortable. Right. So you need to play with different options. Don't be afraid to experiment with hitting it head on versus not. Yeah? And then figure out what feels best to you. I'm having trouble with words today. Paul Burke says, member for 1 month. Do you think it has to do with letting the audience know what they're getting into on the channel? No. I mean, what are they subscribing? Absolutely, your audience has to know what they're subscribing to. But for most of us, the personal vulnerability, that kind of stuff, it's not the primary topic. So what are they subscribing for? In our case, they're subscribing for live streaming tips, tech, strategy, audience growth, all of that. That's what we tell them they're subscribing to. We don't say, by the way, you're going to, hear details of my life. That's not necessary because it's weaved in a more natural way. Kevin says, so would you recommend trigger warnings at the beginning of the show? No, I wouldn't. I mean, it depends on, give me an example, Kevin. I would love for you to give me an example of what you're talking about. But if I'm understanding that question right, no, there's no reason to do so. It's just, if you can weave it in personal stories that go along with the context of the show, and you can use it as an example so that people are getting, so let's say you're teaching people about something, let's just tell, you're teaching something about somebody, I can't think of an example right now, but then you're using your personal experience as an example of how to do something or not to do something. Does that make sense? That is what you want to think about. It's how you present it is if you wrap it as a gift and not shove it right in front of your audience. If you can't wrap it and put a bow on it, then keep it to yourself. You know what? I would agree and disagree with that, Floyd. Sometimes in order to share something, it does have to feel a little bit more raw, and that's okay too, right? It doesn't always have to be in a pretty little bow. I think that sometimes there are certain things like the cancer with Nika, my mom's hospital, almost dying experience. Those things don't have to be wrapped in a pretty little bow. You can, like Nika did, wrap it in a bow because she's taking a personal or positive approach to it. But I think that there are times, but if you do it too often, if you're just bleh, too often, then that's too much. But every once in a while, it's totally okay. Matt says, I think more YouTubers should up their storytelling game, even for technical topics. I 1000% agree. That's something that I'm constantly working at. I don't feel like I'm a good storyteller myself, and I know that that's such a powerful way to present information. Most people do not do well at story, and so that's something that I want to study more and do more of and experiment more with, but I totally agree with that. Abraham says, understanding your own boundaries and finding ways to be personal without violating those limits helps us listeners feel like we are actually getting to know you. That feeling makes us not only want to watch more, but we begin to feel a part of what you do and who you are. Absolutely. Let's see. I'm just scrolling back up to see. Especially when you know many will learn something very important for what you have gone through. And that's one of the things that I'm talking about in this podcast episode is how important it is to actually share those things that you've gone through that are traumatic or even on the positive side, but what I have learned is that doing things like, so I did a TEDx talk, not a TED talk, TEDx talk. But that was probably the most vulnerable I've gotten with my audience, and that was live streamed. I'll tell you this, that was live streamed, and I speak a lot. I speak a lot to big audiences, small audiences, all of it. And I love speaking. I do really well at it. That TEDx talk was live streamed. And because it was so personal, it was really vulnerable, I screwed up. I failed miserably. I did it and I got halfway through or a quarter of the way through and I completely blanked on everything I wanted to say. That has never happened to me before, ever. I was devastated. I went out to the hallway and I cried. And everybody was like, keep going, you got this. And the audience was, I'm going to cry thinking about it because it was so emotional for me to share the information that was in that TEDx talk. But I made them, I asked them to allow me to restart that whole thing. And so the video that is posted online was the complete thing without the screw up. But holy cow, like that was a miserable moment for me. But I got up, I did it again. I didn't let myself fail completely because I kept going, right? And that would be the perfect example of something that I could share that is personal and embarrassing, like completely embarrassing for me, because I've never failed on stage, and that one was wretched. But that would be the perfect example of sharing a story where you're teaching, where you're helping the audience see, like, you don't fail unless you stop, right? You're not a failure unless you like allow that to, if I had just left and didn't complete that speech, that would have been a failure. I didn't. I got back in there in front of an audience who were like right up, on me. So I'm like staring them in the face. And they were so incredibly supportive. They were cheering me on. They were like, you got this, you got this. And it was such a learning experience. But that would be a perfect example of talking about a vulnerable moment where you can help people see a positive outcome. Does that make sense? Keep doing that darn thing, no matter what, just show up. Well, even if there was some part edited out, you knocked it out of the park, I would happily share my most embarrassing public speaking moment, and I bet it would make you laugh, right? It's, do you think the fail during your presentation made the audience love you more because you were human? Probably, yeah, because when I got back, the amount of love that they were sharing towards me was incredible and made me want to cry all over again. But they weren't presenting that amount of love towards me the first go around. And the second time around, they were all in. Like, no one wants to see people do not want to see people fail. There is a percentage of the world that loves that because they're trolls but whatever. That's such a small percentage. Most of the world does not want to see and witness somebody fail or be miserable. And so absolutely, I think you're spot on. It did make them love me even more. And my whole point of telling that story, I kind of went off the track. But my point of telling that story is that by sharing those vulnerable things, and in that speech, I was very vulnerable about my experiences and stuff in my previous life. And I have had so many people come to me over the years after watching that speech and talking about how they were able to, like, one that sticks in my head. One person said, you know what? Like, I have a daughter. She's young still, but this speech changed the way I think about raising her. And that alone is incredible. Like, if you can realize that by sharing your crap, right, and sharing your experiences, that that actually can affect somebody else's life, the fact that girl, whoever she is going to wind up being raised in a more powerful way. She's going to now understand how, because of her dad's actions, having watched that video, she's going to understand how to stick up for herself. She's going to understand how to be more stronger of a person than she may have wound up growing up to be outside of that. So, yeah. Hey, Leslie. Yeah, crying on stream? Okay. It's so funny because... it's so funny because in Lita, the challenge that just ended, so many people cry inside of that. It's not often you see me like tear up on live stream. What an impact. Yes, right? Like and that's what's so important about realizing about why you should be sharing these things. I watch an incredible mind, an incredible personality, an incredible heart showing themselves. That's uplift. That's inspiration. Yes, totally. Yeah, it doesn't have a ton of views. It's not, and it's not something I really talk about because I don't really think, it's necessary to talk about, but in this particular situation, for sure. Having a positive impact on one person is everything. Exactly. Like, if that's the whole reason that I had to get up to share my story for that one young girl who will live differently because of it, okay, if I had to go through the things that I had to go through in my life in order to have that impact on one person, how great is that, right? So, do you see the reason that you need to share this stuff with your audience? Thank you, guys. By the way, Dr. Ela coming in with a new picture. I love the new picture. Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome. Okay, so, and on that note, I love the hashtag. You guys are amazing. All right. What else do y'all want to talk about? And this is the kind of stuff that you get in the podcast, by the way. I know I'm talking about it a lot, but I'm very excited about where it's going to go. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. A new episode is coming out soon. And we also have the Facebook group. So the YOUniquely You Facebook group, link is, I'll be adding it to the description if it's not already. But that Facebook group is for the purpose of discussing these types of things, right? And exploring how to make a bigger impact through adding you to everything that you do in life and content and business, all of it. So, I'll get it out the door ASAP. So, all right, let's see. Oh, I already read that answer, or that question. Okay. Wait, hold on. I think, my scroll is not working. I think I found the one pick that can be Facebook, IG, Google, and LinkedIn. It's been a good week. But because you want different personality on them. All right, I guess I'll end it there. That's a good note to end it on. Thank you guys so much. Tomorrow on the ECAMM Go Live Now show, we will be talking about Facebook Messenger rooms, and it's such a different topic, right? It feels so different. I'm like, and for a turn. So, yeah, join us tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific, 4 days a week around here. 10 a.m. Pacific, Tuesday through Friday. Definitely join us for more of this and more tech talk as well. There you go. I love it. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Put your dancing shoes on because we have to go out with a dance break at this point. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you, Nadia. I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up and participating in this conversation. All right. I will see you. Put those dancing shoes on. We're going to dance break.